So good morning, students. Let's proceed with the LED part which we discussed yesterday, and if time permits, we'll start discussing the laser today. So we have already discussed what are the advantages, disadvantages of LED, what are the types of the LED, and then we discussed the valence band and the conduction band and the operation of the LED through the absorption and spontaneous emission process. In the last lecture, we discussed about the active region. We derived the internal quantum efficiency. So you can see the equations on your screen. And finally, we got equation 6, which is the internal quantum efficiency in terms of the lifetime. So the numerator is total lifetime and the denominator is lifetime, which is radiative. Then we proceeded to find the LED power, and we saw that the LED power can be evaluated using that equation on the bracket. So it is related to internal quantum efficiency, and then you have the constants HCQ, and it is dependent on I and lambda, that is the drive current and the wavelength of operation. We discussed about the external quantum efficiency, and then very important, we discussed about the modulation of the LED, where we saw that the bandwidth can be expressed in the form of electrical bandwidth, which we have been doing till now, and it can also be expressed in the form of an optical bandwidth. And we saw what is the difference between the two. So this graph really tells us what is the difference between the two, where you can see that the electrical 3 dB point, which is here, and then you have the optical 3 dB point, and you can see the difference there. There is an increase in the optical bandwidth. So an optical bandwidth will always be much higher than the electrical bandwidth. So that's why we wish to operate in the optical domain. So we also saw the difference between electrical bandwidth. So we can see that the ratio of output and input current is 1 by root 2, whereas in the optical bandwidth we get this ratio as half. So the 3 dB electrical point will turn out to be a 6 dB optical bandwidth, optical point in the optical domain. Okay, so that is what we saw, and then we solved one numerical. So I think, yeah, we got the entire answer in that numerical. Okay, so that is what we have done till now. Okay, so let's proceed with today's lecture. So we'll try and solve one numerical, but before that, some other information regarding the modulation bandwidth of LED. So this modulation bandwidth, this LED modulation bandwidth, is dependent on three mechanisms in general. One is doping level in active region. So active region is where your recombination is happening. That is where the carriers are there and how much of them are converted into light. Okay. Second is reduction in radiative lifetime. Radiative lifetime due to injected carriers. Injected carrier. So this is important. We want one is doping level. How much do you dope? So modulation will depend on that, and how much of this radiative lifetime will reduce because of injected carriers. That means how many of these carriers will convert into radiation, how many will remain non-radiative, and the last one is the parasitic capacitance of the device. Okay. So these are the three procedures or three reasons that will affect the modulation bandwidth of the LED. So in general, the third point, the parasitic capacitance, we assume this as negligible because capacitance always has a very low value. So the speed at which your LED can modulate, directly current modulate, it is limited by the lifetime of the carriers. So basic would be that it is dependent on point number 2. So this point number 2 will play a major role in finding the modulation bandwidth of the LED. Right? So if we assume or denote the optical output power as PO omega, this is in the frequency domain, right? And omega will be the angular frequency, And if we find the ratio with PDC, that means the DC power value, then in general this is given as 1 by 1 plus omega tau 1 whole square raised to half. Right? So this is what has been found through the research. This is how it varies, this ratio on the RHS on the LHS with frequency. Right? So RHS is 1 by 1 plus omega, which is the angular frequency, tau 1, where tau 1 is your injected carrier lifetime. That means how many electrons we are injecting at the input, what is the lifetime of those inputs, right? And that is exactly what is point number 2. So point number 2 is telling you that how many you know carriers we inject and how many of them will react radiatively. That is going to define the modulation bandwidth, right? And PDC on the left hand side denominator is basically the DC power from the same current, right? So we're not going in for the derivation of this equation. We are rather interested in using this equation. Okay. So in general, we need to remember and we need to know that the modulation bandwidth of LED is going to depend on doping level, uh, radiative lifetime of the injected carriers, and the parasitic capacitance of the device, but which in general is going to be the be negligible, and therefore the ratio of output power to that of DC power will be given as that equation in the bracket. Okay. So let us solve a numerical based on this. This numerical is given in the book John Senior. So let me read out the question. So the question is the minority carrier recombination lifetime for an LED is 5 nanoseconds. Okay, so I'm not writing the entire question, it's long to write it. I'll just mention it here and write the parameters which are given. Okay. So it says the minority carrier recombination lifetime. Let me scroll up. We can look at the equation also. Okay. So it says the minority carrier recombination lifetime for an LED is 5 nanoseconds. That means at the input we are giving some electrons into this LED, right, as the input, and that lifetime, which is tau 1 in the equation, is 5 nanoseconds. Okay. When a constant DC drive, next statement, when a constant DC drive current is applied to the device, the optical output power is 300 microwatt. That means PDC is 300 microwatt. Right? The question is determine the optical output power when the device is modulated with an RMS drive current corresponding to DC drive current at frequencies of A 20 megahertz and B 100 megahertz, and we need to find the output power. That means we need to find P naught of omega at those two frequencies. Okay. What is given to us is, it may be assumed that parasitic capacitance is negligible. And next question is determine 3 dB optical bandwidth for the device and estimate 3 dB electrical bandwidth. Okay, so that part we will do later, estimating the different bandwidths. Okay, that part we can do a little later. So let us look at the solution. We just have to directly use that equation. So I'll rewrite that equation. We need to find P naught of omega. I'll take the PDC in the denominator on the LHS to the right hand side. So you'll have PDC divided by 1 plus omega tau 1 the whole square raised to half. So PDC is given to us, which is 300 microwatt, right? And we have 1 plus, now the first omega we need is 20 megahertz into tau 1 is given to us, which is 5 nanoseconds. This is the whole square raised to half, right? So all we have to do is just evaluate that value. So we'll get the P naught of omega. At 20 megahertz. So you can calculate with me. We can match the answer. Check the answer. This is what I get. $254.3 microwatts. Are you getting that answer?
So it's 1 plus 20 mega into 5
Oh,
nanosecond whole
hold on,
square.
hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay, wait, wait. I have made an error here. I'll remove that. Okay. See, we are given the frequency here. This is F. This is not omega. Okay, so I made that error. Let's redo this. So we can write this as PDC divided by 1 plus. Now this will be 2 pi F. So 2 pi into 20 megahertz into 5 nanoseconds square raised to half. Raised to half. Okay. I directly. No, I had taken 2 pi F. I just forgot to mention that. Okay. I think you'll get the same answer. Just check. So P naught of omega, this will be 300 microwatt. So 300 into 10 raised to negative 6 divided by 1 plus 2 pi into 20 into 5 into 10 raised to 6 for the megahertz into 10 raised to negative 9 for 5 nanoseconds. This will be the whole square and the entire thing will be half. So let's keep this as it is. Let's check the denominator. The denominator that I have is this. $10.88 raised to half. Do you get that in the denominator? Or 1 second. I made a mistake. Sorry, 1.39. This is 1.39 raised to half. So
Totally, we are getting 254 into 10 raised to minus.
yeah, I have that 254.3 microwatt. Are you getting that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can try out the next frequency also. It's the same procedure, just the frequency is 100 megahertz. Let us see what answer we get. So P naught of omega in this case, in the second case, will be 300 into 10 raised to negative 6. So that second frequency is 100 megahertz. So this is what I have with me.
So 9.09 into 10 raised to minus 5.
So 90, you can make it 90.8 microwatt.
90.9
Yeah,
microwatt.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Right. Okay. So the answers match. Okay. So this question has been asked a few times in the question paper, right? Regarding the modulation bandwidth, what is it dependent on, and the numerical. So similar numerical like that. Okay. So it's very easy. Just you have to use this equation to find the answer. Okay. So I hope this was clear. It's simple to understand. Now let's look at the second part. It says determine the 3 dB optical bandwidth for the device and estimate the 3 dB electrical bandwidth, right? Okay, so now to do this, let me scroll up and let us look at what we had done yesterday in the electrical bandwidth. So if you see here, see, this is the electrical bandwidth, the ratio here. This is bandwidth electrical. So I out by In is 1 by root 2, right? Whereas if you compare that with optical bandwidth, this is the ratio. So this is the ratio here, right? So bandwidth optical, right? So just for comparison, bandwidth electrical, that ratio I out by I in is 1 by root 2, right? So we can clearly see from this comparison here that the optical bandwidth is 1 by root 2 into 1 by root 2, right? So it is 1 by root 2 times bandwidth electrical. That's why we say that the optical bandwidth is more, right? So that is the comparison there. So this will be used in the second part of the numerical, which we have to estimate, right? So it says with all these values which are given, we need to estimate the electrical bandwidth and the optical bandwidth. Okay, so now let me rewrite that equation again. The equation is P out of omega divided by P dc is 1 by 1 plus omega tau 1 the whole square raised to half, right? Now whenever we have to find the bandwidth, and it's given specifically, we need to find 3 dB bandwidth, right? We need to find 3 dB bandwidth, right? So what happens at this 3 dB? At this 3 dB, the ratio of the power P naught by P in, right? This ratio just becomes half. That ratio just becomes half. Only then you get 1 by root 2 as the RMS value, and that corresponds to 0.707, which in the log scale is 3 dB, right? So basically what this 3 dB bandwidth means, it means that this ratio on the LHS will become half. It is half power point. That is, when you compare the input and the output powers, the output power has gone half the value of the input power, right? So this half will be equal to 1 plus omega tau 1 the whole square raised to half, right? So that is the catch here. So now this will be equal to half. Now let's do some squaring part here, or let's cross multiply. Therefore, you can see that the RHS denominator is raised to half. So I'm going to take it on the LHS and square it. So I'll write it 1 plus omega tau 1 the whole square. I'll get rid of the half by squaring the LHS, and since I'm cross multiplying, this will just become 2 raised to 2, which is 4, right? Therefore, now adjusting this equation, 1 plus omega tau 1 the whole square will be 4. Therefore, omega tau 1 the whole square will be 3. Therefore, I can write omega tau 1 is root 3. Omega tau 1 is root 3, right? Now let's write this in the form of frequency. Omega is 2 pi f into tau 1 is root 3, which implies, if I write this in the form of frequency, it will be root 3 divided by 2 pi tau 1. So this will be root 3. Tau 1 value is given to us, which is 5 nanoseconds. Therefore, I can plug that in. So you'll have 2 pi into 5 into 10 raised to minus 9. Therefore, I can get the frequency value, right? So let's see what value we get here. Okay, so I get somewhere around 55.2 megahertz. Just check with me if you get that value. 55.2 megahertz. Right now, all of this is in the optical domain because we have considered the carrier lifetime of an LED, which is 5 nanoseconds. That means the input was given as the electrons, and this much is the timeline for those carriers, right? So this is nothing but this frequency here is nothing but the optical bandwidth, right? And we have seen the relation between optical and electrical bandwidth, right? The electrical bandwidth is 1 by root 2 times of optical bandwidth. So if I have to calculate the electrical bandwidth, it will be nothing but the optical bandwidth divided by root 2, 1 by root 2 times. So this will be nothing but 55.2 megahertz divided by root 2, right? And that answer is 39 megahertz. 39 megahertz, right? So you can see here through this problem very clearly that the electrical bandwidth that you get is about 39 megahertz, whereas for the same setting, same kind of carrier lifetime and same kind of LED, you get the optical bandwidth which is 55.2 megahertz, right? So there is an increase in the optical bandwidth, which we mentioned yesterday also, but through this numerical we are able to see this very, very clearly. Okay, so this is one numerical which is there in the book, so I thought it is better to solve this so that we can clearly understand what is the difference between this electrical bandwidth and this optical bandwidth. So it is very clear through this numerical that the electrical bandwidth is lesser than that of optical bandwidth. That's why we need this optical communication. You always get a higher bandwidth, right? For a different setting, this difference in the optical bandwidth and electrical bandwidth will be much, much higher, right? Okay, so let's solve one more numerical on LED and we'll close LED. This numerical is on what we had solved yesterday on the lifetime. Okay, so I'll just read out the question with the parameters. So a double heterojunction LED operating at 1310 nanometer has radiative and non-radiative recombination times of 30 and 100 nanosecond respectively. That means the radiative lifetime tau r and the non-radiative lifetime tau nr, they are given to us as 30 nanosecond and 100 nanosecond. The current injected is 40 milliampere, so I is 40 milliamperes. And the question which is asked is calculate bulk recombination lifetime, that means calculate tau, internal quantum efficiency, eta internal, and internal power level. Okay, so we had solved a similar kind of problem yesterday. So you can go ahead and see how you can solve this problem. I'll give you a minute to solve it. Okay, and then I'll also solve so that we can match the answers. So you can look at the same problem which we had solved yesterday. So first see how you can solve for tau, that is the total recombination lifetime.
So 1 by tau is 13 by 300.
How much do you get? 1 second. So we'll use this equation. 1 by tau is 1 by tau r is 1 by tau nr. Okay, so 1 by tau r is 1 by 30 and tau nr is 1 by 100. I'm not writing the units because these units both are nanoseconds, right? So this is 1 by tau. So I can write this as tau as 100 into 30 divided by 100 plus 30. This will be nanoseconds. So I get some 23.06 nanoseconds. Are you getting that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So remember that we don't need 1 by tau, we need tau. Okay, that is the bulk recombination lifetime. Means it includes both the radiative as well as non-radiative. Okay. I hope that was clear. Okay. Next, we need to find the internal quantum efficiency. So we know that the internal quantum efficiency is tau divided by tau r. So we have just calculated the total recombination lifetime. So that is 23.06 nanoseconds divided by tau r, which is given to us, which is 30 nanoseconds. So the nanosecond cancels each other. So the internal quantum efficiency will be 0.768 or 9.
Yes, sir. 0.769.
Yeah. So this will be 76.9%. That means, so this basically means that if you are injecting about 100 carriers, electrons, only 76.9 of them are becoming, light. That is the efficiency of this LED, right? Whether it is good or bad, that will depend on the application that you have, right? So ideally, you want this to be 100, but practically, it's not going to be possible. Okay. Next, we need to calculate the internal power. So you can use the standard equation, which is beta int HCI divided by Q lambda. Right? Lambda is also given to us, which is 1310 nanometer, and the others are just constant values. Right? So let me write those. So eta we just calculated 0.769. And H is 6.6 into 10 raised to minus 34. C is 3 into 10 raised to 8. I is given to us, which is injected current is 40 milliamperes. So 40 into 10 raised to negative 3. And Q is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19. Lambda is 1310 nanometer. So 1310 into 10 raised to minus 9. So you can evaluate and see what answer you get. So in general, when we deal with the LEDs, in general, your answers should always be in some milliwatt or microwatt. Okay, lesser than milliwatt. If you get watt, okay, depending on the data, that's okay. But in general, in practice, watts of power will not work. It will destroy the LED. Okay, so kind of a check is if you get milliwatt or microwatt.
29.05 milliwatt.
20 29.1 milliwatt.
Yes, sir.
1 second. Are you sure? I am getting 2.91 milliwatt. Anyone else with that answer, or you get 29? I'm checking again. You can also check.
So 29.
29. Okay. We'll see. Anyone else getting 29?
Yes, sir. 29.
Oh, 29.
29.
Okay, fine. Okay. So, milliwatt. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So 29.1 something is your milliwatt. Okay. So this particular problem was asked last year in the question paper. Okay, with the same parameters and everything. Okay, they had also asked you to find the same values. Okay, so this is all which is mentioned to, in regard to LED in your syllabus. Okay, so what is basically
Sir,
the tell me.
so I got 37.78 into 10 raised to minus 3.
37. No, have you used the same values? Did you multiply with this Eta INT. I think your answer is just this bracket, HCI by Q lambda.
Sir, got it now.
I got it. I think you missed that internal quantum efficiency.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay. So you're getting 29.1 milliwatt, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Great. Okay. Okay. So in terms of LED, the advantages are many. It has a simple design, simple circuit. Very easy to manufacture. You just take those alloys, make heterostructure. Cost is low. That is why you would prefer an LED. It is also reliable. For our labs also, we use it in your project. Also, you'll be using the LEDs. But the problem in terms of communication for large distance is that the LED has a spectral width which is very large. So with distance, this light is just going to spread out, and with distance the intensity also becomes very, very low, right? So in terms of longer distance transmission, LEDs do not work. Means they work, but they are not very efficient, right? So for shorter distance, obviously we'll always use LED. So just take an example of your project itself, right? So if you're doing any blood pressure monitoring or heart monitoring, and if you're showing your output in terms of an LED glowing, that works very well inside a room, because you're able to see that LED glow. But with distance, that becomes very difficult. So in terms of longer distance, which is the aim of optical communication, we cannot use LED because the efficiency of the LED becomes very, very low. So in that case, we tend to use what is known as the laser, because laser has much directional light compared to the LED, and it also gives coherent light because of the cavity in which the light amplification takes place. So we'll talk about that. So that's why we need to talk about the lasers. The disadvantage of laser, of course, it's costly, right? Many people also talk about the radiation aspect, but the wavelength where these lasers will work in optical communication do not give any kind of radiation, right? So lasers are used for many applications. One of the medical applications is for cataract, where laser operation is used. It is being used in other medical operations as well, right? So laser, which stands for light amplification through or by stimulated emission of radiation, right? And I've already explained you this entire full form, what it means, what is the idea behind this full form. So this laser will come in many forms, and the dimensions will be different. The fiber system, the OFC system, uses semiconductor laser types. Semiconductor laser diodes. Okay, so it's basically a diode only, which the OFC system is going to use. So the output of this laser is going to be what we call as monochromatic. So you can understand through this monochromatic word, it is mono and chromatic. That means mono stands for only one, and chromatic is another word for wavelength. That means this laser, which is monochromatic, is highly wavelength specific. Highly wavelength specific, right? So for our system, the OFC system that we wish to operate for longer distance, we want to operate this laser with the dispersion shifted fibers in the 1550 nanometer range, right? The other advantage of this laser, the ones that we wish to operate in 1550 nanometer, is that the light is directional. It is directional, and also as I specified, apart from this light being directional, it will also be resonant. Right? Resonant means it will be just in it will have the same angle and everything. We'll discuss that, right? So we have already discussed the operation through which the laser is going to function. But just to recap, and so I have put all this in the notes, and I've just taken the various diagrams so that I can explain it much better in the lecture. You'll find the same diagram. So if I scroll down, I've already put the diagrams on this digital notepad. So I'll be explaining all these diagrams one by one. So this diagram which you see on the screen right now explains you the three phenomena which we have discussed already. So you can see here, diagram A stands for absorption, which I have underlined. Diagram B stands for spontaneous emission. So these two processes, A and B, occur in LEDs. And then there is a diagram C here, which I have not named, but now I'll be naming it, and that is stimulated emission. Stimulated emission. So explaining the function of the operation of the LED or the laser can be done efficiently by using diagrams like what you see in the on the screen. Okay. So the basic principle of operation of the laser will involve the photon absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission. Right. So to make this more clear, diagram A actually is photon absorption. Okay. So this also occurs in the LED. So in the diagram, we are just considering two levels of energy. E1 is the ground state or the valence band, and E2 is the excited state or the conduction band. And like I explained to you, the electrons want to be in the valence band, it is stable. They do not want to be in the conduction band because that is unstable. Right? So if we go to the Planck's law, the transition between E1 and E2, it is going to involve absorption or emission of the photon. Right? So what we are going to have is, if I take HF12, that will be nothing but the energy E2 minus E1. Right? Where E1 is the energy of valence band and E2 is the energy of the conduction. Right? So this system in the is always going to be in the ground state, stable. Now when a photon of energy HF12, it's going to strike the system, right? So you can see here this photon HF12 is striking the system, this one here, right? So it strikes the system, then electron which is there in E1, it is going to absorb this energy. So this electron here is going to absorb this energy, and obviously it's going to move up. If this energy is enough to take care of the band gap, this distance here, then it's going to absorb it, and it's going to move to state E2, which is conduction band. Now since this is unstable band, the state, the electron will stay there for some time, and it will always try to fall back. And once it falls back, it needs to let out that energy. So you can see here in diagram B, this electron which had reached E2 is now falling back to E1 here, and in the meanwhile it gives this energy HF12 back, which is in the form of light. Right? And this process is known as spontaneous because it just occurs spontaneously. We are not doing anything to it. Right? Now in the third diagram, we can also induce or stimulate to make a downwards transition. Right? We can also stimulate to make an upward transition. We can also make a stimulation for a downward transition. So what it shows in diagram C is stimulated emission, where there is an electron which has already reached the conduction band. We are not waiting for this electron to fall down to valence band itself. Rather, we are giving an energy to this electron. Right? So we are giving an energy, some external energy or a stimulant, and because of this the electron falls down. Now this electron, when it falls down, it should give out two energies. One energy is the energy it took to move from E1 to E2. So I'm drawing an arrow. So it had taken some energy E1 to move from E1 to E2, and then it should also let out this new energy. So I'll write this new energy which we are giving for it to fall down. Right? So therefore you see it is giving out two energies, HF12 and HF12, and these two will be in phase. Right? So this is nothing but light which comes out, plus you are also getting two types of energies which are similar in nature. And since this photon is in phase with the incident photon, that means the photon which we are impinging, this entire process is known as stimulated emission. This entire process is known as stimulated emission. Okay, so this is the process through which the laser is going to function. Okay, let me move this diagram a little bit. We need this diagram later. Let me explain you another concept which is very important in terms of the laser, and that is known as population inversion. Okay, this is a very important concept, very basic also, which we need to know. Okay, so the idea of population inversion is this: the stimulated emission will exceed absorption. Okay, please understand this clearly. The stimulated emission will exceed absorption only when population in the conduction band is greater than that in the valence band, right? That means for stimulated emission, so if I draw this, I think you'll understand this better, right? If majority of the electrons, okay, these circles are electrons, if majority of them are in the valence band and minority are there in the conduction band, then I cannot have stimulated emission, because if I give an energy to these two electrons, they'll fall down, but I'll get very less light. Compare this with a scenario where I have maximum of the electrons in the conduction band and only minority in the valence band. Now if I give an external energy to all these electrons, what I will get is these electrons falling down and I'll get loads of energy out. That means a lot of light out of this system, right? So population inversion basically means that the population of the carriers of the electrons in the conduction band or excited state will be greater than that of the ground state or the valence band, right? That's why we are calling it population inversion. So this is the stable state. This is the stable state because maximum population is stable. It is in the valence band and only minority is there in the conduction band. This is known as population inversion because majority of the carriers are in the conduction band and now we are impinging or stimulating them with external energy, right? So obviously population inversion is not an equilibrium condition, it's an unstable condition, and therefore to achieve this population inversion, right, we need to do some external techniques, because by itself, by nature, this inversion will not occur, because like us, the electrons also want to be in stable state, right? So this will never occur naturally. Okay, the natural state will always be that the electrons are in the ground state or the valence band, right? So for this population inversion to occur, we need to give or have some technique by which majority of these carriers or electrons will move in the conduction band, and that process is known as pumping. Some books, some sources also call it as external pumping, but it is understood that it is external, right? So we use various pumping techniques to ensure that this population inversion occurs, right? So in semiconductor lasers, which we use for the OFC systems, in these kind of lasers, semiconductor lasers, population inversion will be achieved by injecting the electrons into the material device at particular contacts, and we will fill this lower energy states of the conduction band. So we will ensure that majority of these carriers will move into the conduction band, right? So this is an important concept which we need to understand in terms of the lasers, right? So this is very, very important, the pumping techniques and why we are getting this population inversion into or for the lasers operation, right? So these laser diodes will occur at will work at certain conditions, and in those certain conditions these lasers will provide us with what is known as equilibrium. And at this equilibrium, we will also get resonance, and at this point we will also get amplification. Okay, so all of this needs a particular state, and when we are pumping, we need to ensure that these equilibrium states are met. Okay, so this involves some kind of mathematics, and then we can discuss the types of the lasers which are specified in your syllabus. Okay, so this is the function way in which the lasers are going to operate.